Let's first off start off by talking about what we're not here to do tonight. While it may feel warranted, we're not gathered here to continuously talk down about the Republican Party or Trump's antics, and remarks may be expressed tonight, comparisons made, and observations highlighted throughout tonight's event as the situation may warrant, and they are warranted. However, we feel that it's best to overcome the current political climate in our way to build up our platform and our policies, rather than spending all of our time to tearing down the ideals of the other side. That being said, we want to discuss our main goal for the evening, and as of late, the political scales have shifted to polarized opposites, and in doing so, many voters feel unheard or scared or uncertain. Our objective tonight is for those people to unite together in understanding and with the ideas and the policies that the candidates before you are platforming on, and perhaps try to settle some of those emotions in the process. Through the powers of logic, reasoning, and understanding, we can stop trying to make America great again and start appreciating her for the beauty that she already has, especially right here in the great state of Missouri. Being a lifelong Wisconsinite myself, I just recently relocated to this amazing state. I've always had a love of history and politics, and unfortunately I was unable to fulfill that need while I was up in Wisconsin. I was working for the post office for 10 years, and due to the Hatch Act, I was unable to get into politics while I was up there. However, I did find the need to always fulfill the need to be at the center of attention, because I did have a long storied 10-year career as a comic, so that was great. But that did lead me to this amazing gig once I did move down here. So, yay. Since moving here though, I've fallen in love not only with the beautiful city of St. Louis, but with this beautiful state, the people, and its history as well. Even becoming for a brief moment in time, a tour guide for the first state capital in Missouri. But enough about me. Let's meet our distinguished panelists here tonight. First up, we have Tracy McCreery, who's a state senator who represents the 24th senatorial district in St. Louis County, which includes Creve Coeur, Disprayer. Sorry, I'm not from here. I get yelled at so much by trying to actually pronounce the French pronunciations. Fenton, Frontenac, Glendale, Huntley, Kirkwood, Ladue, Maryland Heights, Sunset Hills, Valley Park, Westwood, and unincorporated parts of the county as well. She was the first woman elected as the independent to the senator, and she has held positions in sales training, and management in the pharmaceutical, telecommunications, and health industries. I will now yield to Ms. McCreery to let her introduce herself a little bit further.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here tonight. So although our moderator listed off a bunch of miscellaneous municipalities in St. Louis County, generally the Senate district I represent, it goes up and down I-270. So it starts up in Maryland Heights, it's up there at the St. Charles County line at the Missouri River, and then it swings all the way down and hits the Jefferson County line down in South County. And then I go out Highway 44 and have Valley Park and Fenton as well. Yeah, so it's a pretty, I spend a lot of time on 270, that is for sure. So I am in year 3 in the Missouri State Senate. Before I became a senator in 2022, I spent 9 years in the Missouri House of Representatives, and I was around during a couple of, I've had two different districts when I was in the State House, because when you're in office during a redistricting year, your district just kind of changes right under your feet. So I am glad that you mentioned that when I was first elected in 2011, I ran and won as a third-party candidate. I ran as an independent and beat a Republican and a Democrat in a special election. I am really proud of that, because it kind of laid the groundwork for me over the next dozen years to be able to look at each issue individually and do what I think is best for my constituents and the entire state of Missouri. I didn't have one party thinking that they could tell me what to do or what not to do. So it's been truly a liberating thing to be able to approach politics that way. I am going to be running for re-election next year. It's an honor to be here tonight, because part of what makes all of us good candidates, quite honestly, is having interactions with people like you. So I'm actually looking more forward to the questions and things like that than me. I'd rather hear more from you than me talking at you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Now, just because her entire district is on the 270 doesn't mean that we have to continuously yell out her name while we're on the 270 either.
You can.
Yeah. But we also are very privileged to have with us also Jessie Schaefer, who is running for the Missouri House of Representatives, District 114, which covers Pevely, Herculaneum, Crystal City, and Festus. She currently serves as the chair of the Jefferson County Democratic Central Committee. She also serves her community as a member of the Festus Parks Board. And she is passionate about voter education and community organizing. And I will yield to her to allow her to introduce herself a little bit further.
Thank you. Thank you so much for emceeing this event. Thank you to Women Dems for hosting it. And a lot of thank you to Senator McCreery for being here. I think it's very important that we have somebody here who is actually holding office that can take your concerns back to Jeff City. Dan and I are working hard to hopefully get ourselves to Jeff City as well. And really, that bio pretty well sums it up. This is actually going to be my third time running for the House. It is a pretty red district, but I'm very confident that we can flip this district as long as we can get our message out to enough voters. So I think a key thing to getting the message out to voters that's going to resonate with them and get people to vote for us is making sure that we know what's important to our community. So I'm really glad to have all of you here tonight to help us do that.
Thank you so much for that. And absolutely, you were absolutely amazing at our first town hall, and we would love to. And once we started planning this one, the first thing that Dan put in the message was, we got to get a hold of Jessie. So we're honored and privileged to have you back. Absolutely. And that being said, the next person that's part of this distinguished panel has been very vocal in planning this, and we could not have had this without him. And while he is running for the Missouri House of Representatives, District 97. I'm so sorry, I'm being tongue-tied today. Which covers the northern part of Jefferson County, which includes Highridge, Parkdale, Murphy, and the Fenton area. He has produced over 200 podcasts on politics, interviewing different authors, activists, politicians, public defenders, and prisoners. He served on 2 HOA boards. Dan has graduated from Mizzou with a degree in electrical engineering. Over his career, though, he has designed electronic circuit boards, wrote software, traveled worldwide as a field sales engineer and trainer, and strange enough, has worked even in marketing. And I would like to yield that back to Dan at this time to introduce himself a little bit further.
Thank you. Yeah, it was kind of weird to be involved in marketing, being an engineer. It's just like, what did the two have to do with each other? But next thing I know, there I am, right? So it was kind of fun, though. I learned a lot about marketing there. My name is Dan Schaefer. I'm running for District 97, which is this area right here. It goes from Highridge. It just kind of follows the county line all the way over to the Merrimack River, and then south about 2 or 3 miles. And so it includes rural areas as well as sort of urban areas here. So I'm excited to be running again. I ran last time. My name was on the ballot last November, and it'll be on the ballot again next November. I was on a podcast the other day. I was being interviewed in a podcast. I've been interviewed by several podcasts recently, and I was taken back because the guy asked me a question. He says, "You're progressive, aren't you?" And I said, "Yeah, I'm a progressive Democrat." And he says, "What does progressive mean?" And I'm like, oh, yeah, I had to think about that. So I spoke from my heart, and so, but it didn't go through the filter inside my head, so it just came out kind of jumbled. But so I sat down and wrote what progressivism means to me. Let's read it for you here. It says, progressivism means believing that ordinary folks deserve the same chance as anyone else to get ahead. It's about fairness, it's about making sure hard work is rewarded, it's about families affording health care, schools remaining strong, and government that answers to the people, not big money. So to me, progressivism is just common sense. It's the idea that we move forward. We only move forward when we all move forward together. It means fixing what's broken. It means keeping opportunity within reach. It means making sure that the rules aren't written by the rich and the powerful, but written by and for the people. So progressivism, in plain words here, is fairness, honest government, and a better deal for working people. So related to that, I came up with a quote that I put on my homepage on my website. I'll give it to you here because I feel very strongly about it, and this sort of crystallizes my whole campaign. And it goes like this: for decades, politicians have promised prosperity while giving handouts to their wealthy donors. Working families, they shoulder the burden while healthcare costs rise, schools struggle, and voters lose faith in their government. So I'm running to challenge that failed system and make Jefferson City work for us again. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dan. We can't stress enough how much I fall in line with that message, and I think that definitely resonates here with us here today. And now that everyone's been properly introduced, now for everyone's favorite part of the rules. As I go over the rules for tonight's panel, if anyone has a question that they've written down on one of those cards, please feel free to hold it up right now, and one of our wonderful teammates will go through and collect one of those If you have one of these cards that you've written a question on, feel free to hold it up, and one of our amazing volunteers will come by and collect that. And since we have such an amazing turnout with so many questions that we hope are going to be turned in, we want to get to as many of those as possible. Therefore, once a question is read aloud, each recipient will have 90 seconds to answer before another panelist will be able to jump on. In the previous town hall, we were trying to go ahead and have like an actual time limit, but you guys seem like a pretty good group. You guys seem like you guys can monitor yourselves. But if you guys start to go too long, then we'll pull out the time clock. If you guys start to go a little bit long-winded, then we'll give you guys a red card. Otherwise, if one of you guys has an idea that you guys would like to piggyback on, you guys are welcome to retort. The retort will only be allowed for 60 seconds. So you do have 90 seconds for your initial thought, 60 seconds for a retort. If you guys do receive a red card, you do have 30 seconds to wrap up. With that being said, we can go ahead and get into some questions. Do we have any more cards to be collected? Awesome. Just hold those up, and some of our volunteers will go ahead and grab those. Awesome. So our first question that we have for the panel here today is, how do you guys see yourselves bringing more jobs to your areas if elected?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about that. So this entire region, so St. Louis City, St. Louis County, Jefferson County, and then Franklin, St. Charles County as well, we are truly the economic engine for the entire state. So what we do or don't do here in this region has an impact on the other 5 million Missourians. So this idea of job creation and economic development is extremely important because I feel a sense of responsibility to kind of help folks that are in areas where they're just not going to have a big employers come to town, that kind of thing. So one of the things I think we really need to do is to make sure we never stop investing in public education, because we're never going to be able to grow our economy if businesses and employers can't come here and find talented workforce. And that is an issue that's kind of starting to bubble up a little bit more because the skills that are needed to be able to support yourself and a family are changing, and they've changed since a lot of us were in the workforce. So one of the things that I always try to do as a state senator is stay connected to all of the public schools, so the superintendents, the administrators, but also I have a good relationship with St. Louis Community College, for example, and some of the other technical schools in the region, because without elected officials supporting public education and higher education, having a talk about economic development is just gonna be just kind of a pie in the sky idea. So some of the things that we can do though to make sure that this region is attractive to employers. First of all, we wanna do things that help retain the employers that we already have. So that is, sometimes politicians, we get a little sidetracked by, oh, let's throw some money to try to get a company to come here from another state. Well, you know what? There are already thousands of employers here. I think we should be focused on what can we do to make sure that the employers that are here feel supported and welcome and that they have what they need. Some of those things include investing in infrastructure. So, you know, without good roads and bridges and, you know, public safety, businesses are not going to feel like they can stay here and thrive here. So those are, they're not sexy things, but they're things that we have to do to support the economy. The other thing we can do that helps both employers but also residents and homeowners like all of you is we need to do everything we can to keep people's utility bills as low as possible. So, you know, I hear every day from people that are struggling to pay their water bill, their electric bill, their gas bill. You know, unfortunately for my constituents, we're in the Metropolitan Sewer District footprint and the bills have gone up by 44%. So people are really, really struggling just to keep their home inhabitable. But think about what it would be like to own one of these big businesses. You know, we're lucky our house is 2,000 square feet. Can you imagine what it would be like to be an employer with a big footprint? So I'm keenly aware of making sure that we are not doing anything related to utilities that makes it more expensive than necessary. So that is something that I focus on every day as a state senator.
So I was scribbling down ideas from Senator McCreery because there are a lot of great ideas that you had there. I think one of the biggest things in my district particularly is the port. The port that we have in Herculaneum, or that is supposed to be happening in Herculaneum, it feels like something that we've been talking about for a very long time. And if I were elected, that would definitely be one of the things that I would focus on, figuring out how do we fast track, what funding is available, what else can we do to support this port actually coming to fruition, because it feels like it's been an idea for longer than it should have been. And then, you know, as far as, it's very interesting to hear you talk about the utility rates and cost of living and things that some of these employers end up increasing for our residents. I know one thing that we have been, it's probably going to come up at some point tonight, is data centers and the amount of energy and things that they use. So I think, I'm almost certain somebody has asked that question, so I'll just hold off on that for now. But the other thing is, you know, sometimes we're offering these tax incentives for things like that, but they're not things that create more jobs. Sure, it's something that we as society need, but it's not creating jobs, it's not bringing employment to Jefferson County, and that is definitely something that we need to focus more on, is attracting good employers to Jefferson County, because I saw a stat recently, I think it's something like, don't quote me on it, it's an estimate, I want to say it was around 63% of Jefferson County residents work outside of the county. And that is a major issue for the county. When people work in St. Louis County, I know, I work in St. Louis County. When you work in St. Louis County, you get your gas in St. Louis County. You might stop at the store in St. Louis County. You get your lunch in St. Louis County. And all of that is tax revenue, sales tax revenue that is getting paid to St. Louis County that should be kept in Jefferson County. So, you know, there's so many reasons to work harder at attracting good employers to Jefferson County. But that is something that I think is often overlooked, is the amount of tax revenue that we're losing out on just on sales tax from people leaving to work outside of our county.
Well, I'd like to build on what Senator McCreery said. First of all, in my opening remarks, I forgot to thank her for being here, because it's really a privilege to have her here with us today. Yeah, Senator McCreery talked about public education, and I have a personal belief that has been under attack for a long time now. Just to throw some numbers out there, the foundation formula, which is used to fund our schools, is a fairly complicated formula, but it relies on one basic thing, which is called the State Adequacy Target, SAT. And that is a calculation of how much it takes to educate each student based upon the higher performing school districts in the state. Back in 2005, when they redid the foundation formula, the amount that was allocated for each student was somewhere around $6,145, somewhere in that area. And since then, they were supposed to increase it every 2 years, but they skipped a number of increases. They skipped a number of adjustments. So here we are in 2025, 20 years later, and the SAT is now about, I think it's $7,100 and some odd dollars, which is about an 18% increase. You might think that's pretty significant, right? Until you look at what inflation did to us between 2005 and today. Inflation brought prices up 65%. So you're looking at an 18% increase over 20 years for money allocated for school versus 65% for cost of living. So to me, those numbers don't make any sense. So the reason why I jump on education, I probably diverted a little bit too much into that topic, but education is absolutely key. We have some very good schools in Missouri. We have Washington University, Rolla, I went to Mizzou, very good schools. And if we have good schools, that's one of the things people consider when they decide to move their business here. So we need to keep up our schools and keep up our infrastructure as well. And one thing I've noticed is I spent some time in sales. I wasn't actually a salesperson, but traveling the world as a sales engineer, basically, I dealt with a lot of salespeople. One thing I learned about sales is a weak salesperson will always sell you on price. A good salesperson will sell you on value. And that's what we really need to do in Missouri. We need to sell these companies that are considering coming into Missouri. We need to sell them on value. So that, yes, that does mean education. It does mean infrastructure. It means making Missouri a great place to live. And I think we need to really focus on that. And to Jessie's point too, yes, I think there are a lot of times people want to have companies move into our area and they'll give them a break on, taxes or whatever. I don't think that's really fair, because if we really sold them on value, they should be willing to move here on their own. One last thing too, we've talked about utility prices. I'm going off on a tangent, I know, but we've seen utility prices go up this last June, and it went up, I think, 12%. And that was because we wanted to fund construction work in progress, CWIP. That is rife for corruption. I'm going to give you some examples here. There was First Energy in Ohio, which was their utility company there, which sold people on the idea that we're going to build these new power plants, and we want to charge you guys for building these power plants. We want to charge it on utility customer bills. They did that. It was rife with corruption. The Speaker of the House actually went to jail over this. Several lobbyists went to jail. Tragically, one of the lobbyists actually committed suicide. I read a whole book on this. There's also First Energy in South Carolina did the same thing. They were going to build two more nuclear power plants. They charged people for it on their utility bills, and then the plants got about halfway through the construction. They ran out of money, they ran over schedule, they canceled the whole thing. So the people in South Carolina are stuck paying, I think it's $1.5 billion on their utility bills for just a big chunk of concrete sitting in the middle of nowhere. So this is the type of thing that we have to get straight in Missouri. We have to make sure that we are asking our businesses, when we make Missouri ready for businesses, we have to make sure that we aren't subsidizing them with our tax dollars only to have them leave the state or go out of business or whatever. So,
Can I just make
Sure.
Our legislators just passed a bill that said that we have to pay for any proposed projects
Yeah.
that Ameren comes up with.
Yeah.
And there was legislation preventing that, and these guys just said, now we have to pay, just like those people in South Carolina. Whatever they decide that they wanna do, we have to pick up the tab.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
That
to me,
was
that's
just
how you
passed.
spell corruption,
That
in
was
my
just
opinion.
passed.
Yeah. We see the same thing with the Kansas City Chiefs stadium as well. The state has to back that up, and I don't think that that's right for the people of Missouri, especially when you go to buy a football ticket that's gonna cost you like, $1,500 for your family or something. I've overstayed my welcome, and Robert's about to hit me over the head.
I thank you so much for that, Dan. And I noticed that this time he did not give me a red card. Yeah, he's like, hey, these are the rules. Give me a red card, and also I'm not supplying you with a red card this time.
I forgot.
Yeah, I forgot.
Can I
Okay.
ask one question? If
Yes.
you hear something they say, can you ask them a little bit more on it or something, or?
Yeah. So also, what
Okay.
to Jessie's point, one thing that she did actually brought up, one question that was given to me was about data centers.
Okay.
And so I'd like to ask that, pass that along now. How can we combat the pro-data center outlook of our county council? This person called Dennis Ganman, her city councilman, and Tim Brown, but they both said to this person that the Bitcoin facility is already a done deal.
So, I honestly can say, like, while I am trying to keep informed on the data center situations, I don't know specifically on that one in particular, if it's a done deal and there's nothing we can do about it. I'm pretty certain there is one supposed to be going in off of Highway P out near Hematite, that one's already, that's the same one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, so then that one, I am pretty certain it was a done deal. I think the public hearing on that was like 3 years ago.
That's what, I talked to Gannon, and that's what he said, and I said, nobody knew anything about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't even know what a Bitcoin was 3 years ago, so how could people even, speak about it?
So that data center in particular, I don't know for certain what type of data center it is.
It's a Bitcoin
But-
mining center.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know that part specifically.
Yes.
So one comment, again, I don't want to be partisan about, I don't think this would be considered partisan, but the Dennis Gannon is lame duck. He's already said he's not running again. So at this point, I'm not certain that he's going to have too much compassion for our concerns because, I mean, what's he got to lose? He's done. But that is the number one thing you can do is go to those county council meetings. They're on, I think, the second and fourth Monday of every month. Does anybody know? Am I right? I went to one a little while ago, but go to those county council meetings. Ask every single time to give your public comment. It doesn't matter if it's on the agenda or not. Go up there, give your public comment. If you've never been to these types of meetings, it's important to know that they can't address anything that's not on the agenda. Anytime you go up and get your 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 5 minutes or however many minutes they decide to give you that day, they're probably not gonna say anything because they're not allowed to by the rules of their procedure, but they'll hear you. And if enough of us go and are heard, then that's what we can do. Now, data centers in general, going forward, the only things that I can really suggest, yes, they consume a lot of energy. So one of the things that I would consider is maybe we try and push for some type of ordinance that requires them to install solar that will help supplement their energy so that it's not the community supplementing that energy. And then another thing that I think would be very important is going forward pushing, and this could be something that maybe you say in a public comment at the meeting yourself. We could push to change the notice, the rules around the public notice that they have to issue. And I believe Festus actually just did this. It used to be, I think, 400 feet from the property. They've now upped it to 1,000 feet. Another thing that people don't realize necessarily about a lot of these data centers is that they generate a lot of noise. I was watching an interview with a man who lived near one that he said he ended up putting a mattress over his bedroom window to block out the sound so that he could sleep at night from the noise release. And I don't think that should be acceptable for any, I mean,
Absolutely not.
no manufacturer should be making that amount of noise 24 hours a day that is a disturbance to the neighboring
What's it
properties.
gonna do to wildlife?
Right, that's a very valid concern, so, I think that if we can advocate for the county council changing the rules around what notice should be, honestly, I think it should be even further than 1,000 feet.
Yeah.
I think it should be, even a 1 or 2 mile radius from the center itself. And just a better job of notifying the public, because that's exactly what's happened with this one that's gonna be going in on hematite. Nobody knew. Nobody knew when the hearings were gonna be, and none of us even really knew. That wasn't on our radar.
Can somebody please explain a Bitcoin mining data center? I'm not sure that.
So I don't know that I can
I don't
explain
know. I don't know what it
Bitcoin
is.
mining in general, but, data centers do a lot more than just Bitcoin. Anything, a lot of people are like, the cloud, everything's stored up in the cloud. Well, it's not up in the clouds, it's in a data center somewhere. Where you used to have things on your hard drive or a thumb drive or on a disk, that doesn't exist anymore, so that goes into the cloud, which is somewhere in a data storage facility. So without those things, when you go to Google and search for an image, there are computers somewhere processing, going through thousands, probably millions of images on the internet to answer your query. And all of that requires supercomputers to do that work. So these data centers have those supercomputers in them, and they draw a lot of power and use a lot of water for the cooling process that it takes to cool those things. So,
Do you mind if I just add on?
yeah, sure, please.
Even though I'm not part of the panel. So just to kind of answer your question a little bit, and I know very, very little about this, but when Bitcoin first came out, they were trying to get it off the ground. So what they did was they hid a lot of Bitcoin in a lot of different websites around the world, and they put it under a lot of different layers, and you had to go and mine it. You had to go and discover it through a lot of different mathematical problems and a lot of different mathematical equations that you built yourself and then had to solve. And it was a really fun IT thing for nerds to really get together and have a lot of fun with. But then once Bitcoin started getting up to the thousands and becoming 150,000, whatever it is right now, and it became a way to get rich quick, then people found out how to manipulate these software codes so they can mine all the rest of it that's still out there, so they could go ahead and build these centers so they could get rich quick using the very same things that people were doing for fun years ago for 40, 50 bucks. So, sorry about that.
No,
No, I'm good. Yeah. We could probably do an hour.
So,
Okay.
gentlemen,
Did anyone else have anything to add on that one, or?
I was gonna ask a bit more.
Oh, sorry, okay, there was a technology, sorry.
I'm basically a nerd, so I can tell you a lot more about Bitcoin, but I would probably bore everybody here to go to sleep. But basically, yeah, what Robert said is fairly true. It basically amounts to having to solve some very complex mathematical equations iteratively, one after the other, and it takes a lot of computer power. I also wanted to talk a little bit about data centers themselves. I happen to be a cloud practitioner for Amazon, and they have data centers all over the world. Every time you go to ChatGPT and ask it a question, or Google has their own AI right now, that takes a lot of energy. And it's not necessarily taking place in your backyard or in your computer at your desk. It's taking place somewhere else. Could be like out in California, it could be in the middle of Russia somewhere, who knows? Hopefully not Russia though. But yeah, it does take a lot of power. And so data centers are one of those things that it's a necessary evil. We have to have these things in order to have our society that we're moving forward with. I don't personally like Bitcoin myself. I think it's a scam. But I've been humbled quite a bit because it keeps going up in value, and I missed the boat on that one. But I still stick to my guns in this thing. I think Bitcoin is pretty precarious and not a very good use of our time and our energy. But given the fact that data centers have to exist, the real question is, where do we put them? And I agree with Jessie. I mean, the noise pollution from these things are horrible. And to me, as an engineer, I look at this thing and say, well, that's because the people that designed these data centers didn't give squat about the noise it made and how much it would interfere with people's lives. I'm not a mechanical engineer, but I can tell you that you put this problem in front of real engineers out there, they'll solve it in a way that it doesn't make so much noise. Now, energy is another thing that's really huge, and that leads back into that utility thing I was talking about earlier, where they want to build more power plants for our area. I think that, I mean, I don't have proof of this, maybe it's a bit of a conspiracy theory, but I think that they're really doing this because they want to build these data centers, and they have to have the energy to build these data centers. So what they're really doing is they're charging us right now, taking money out of our utility bills in order to build these data centers for corporations that aren't going to employ that many people. Once these things are up and running, maybe 50 people at the most, and a lot of it would be managed, you know, from India or somewhere else, you know, because you don't have to be sitting right at the data center in order to manage it. So it's not going to employ that many more people. So I don't see why, you know, why we're having to put our money into this thing to have business. Yeah, maybe they move their data center here, but they're not going to employ that many people, negligible amount. So I'll stop talking.
I will say, one of the things that we all can do, you don't have to be an elected official to have input on this, is when Ameren gives a notice that they're gonna have a hearing, people, like, I would like to see all of you try to get to those hearings. Sometimes they're virtual as well, so even if you don't wanna drive, you know, to the library for a hearing or whatever, we need to make our voices heard when Ameren comes to the community and says that they want to build something, or that they want to, you know, increase rates by a certain percent. The Public Service Commission has to hear from the public, and then we also have a consumer arm called the Office of Public Counsel, and they represent, you know, utility customers in front of the Public Service Commission. So this is like a great example of why all of us should be paying attention, because they have to take input from the public. You know, to build a new power plant just to power one data center is preposterous to me. Because what if that company, the return on it might take 30 to 50 years before that thing is even paid off. That company, what if they only stay in the county for 10 years? Then all of us are left paying for this, and we have all this excess electricity that we don't need, that's not usable locally. So we need to really be paying attention to this. I'm still also not convinced, I'm fairly fiscally conservative, I'm also not convinced that artificial intelligence is a bubble. I'm not convinced it's like here to stay and that it's not just a bubble, and I want to be very cautious with all of our money that we're not investing in something that's going to just blow up in our faces down the road.
Thank you so much.
I just want to let you know today Ameren actually had an online hearing regarding the data center. I couldn't even log in by telephone or by online access today at noon.
So there was
Jeff City. Yeah, the other project is just down the
There's
road.
really good
I mean,
natural
it was
gas and
trying to
battery energy
funding
system.
the road project. There's no accountability. I got notice to go to the post office to sign the certified letter to say they're going to make the road project, taking property from my landlord. There's no notice. There's no regulation and rules to control those kind of public projects, if you will. Plus financially, there's no accountability, so we can't, like, even with AT&T, for example, we don't even have a really reliable, internet connection in the neighborhood. We're talking about AI, blockchain, those kind of data centers. They just talk about is going to be down the road at House Spring here on PP. Those are the concerns we have currently.
Yeah, so regarding AT&T and other telecom and internet providers, the state doesn't regulate those. So the best thing you can do is just, you know, voice your concerns to the actual company. But when it comes to the investor-owned utilities, these monopolies, so Spire, Ameren, Missouri American Water, those are regulated by the state. There are commissions and there is supposed to be transparency and oversight and a chance for the public to have input. If you couldn't participate in a hearing today and you couldn't get on, you should call the Public Service Commission tomorrow and voice your frustration that you couldn't participate as a citizen because, you know, the technology didn't work or whatever the case was. So, you know, we can't just let them continue to run over us. And they're, you know, but we all, it's our responsibility as neighbors to hold their feet to the fire. So, you know, maybe one of these days we can do something that's all just, folks from the Public Service Commission and the Office of Public Counsel would come to a meeting like this and they could talk to you for, you know, an hour and a half or whatever about utilities. And I think that would be a great community experience, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I know we got sidetracked there a little bit, but I'm so grateful that we were able to go ahead and get all of your concerns voiced. And now, as we move on, I have two questions that were poised that kind of are along the same gamut, so I'm going to ask them together. And they are, how can we guarantee that public schools are fully funded and that public school funding does not go to private schools? And then with that, I'm also going to add, do you have any reform to increase public school funding?
I'm not sure I understood the second question, but how to make sure the public schools are fully funded. I don't think I can add much more in there already because I already like blabbed it out before. But yeah, we're definitely underfunded. And I was on News Talk STL, which is a conservative radio station that you guys may or may not be familiar with it. And they were just beating me up, or they were trying to beat me up really horribly. And they were quite surprised that I was punching back. Because one of the things that they said is like, well, we just funded their schools, like we just gave another $1 billion or something. And, you know, I was just, my jaw was open because I'm like, you know, you guys, okay, so you gave like a little push this last year, but it is nowhere near what was really needed, nowhere near what the system was designed for. Mm-hmm. So I think we need to have a conscious approach to this, to moving forward with it. Now, I want to tell you something else too. It's not just the funding, it's this thing called Mo Scholars. I don't know if you know how everybody feels about that, but Mo Scholars is a fund basically that takes money and parses it out to private schools, either parochial schools or charter schools. And they say, great, where did they get their money from? Two sources. Up until this point, up until this past legislative session, I should say, they were getting their money from tax credits. Now, I don't know if you know how tax credits work. They're slightly different than tax write-offs. A tax credit basically says, if you owe the state, say, $1,000 in taxes, you can take 500 of that dollars and pay the taxes, take the other $500 and put it into Mo Scholars or into one of these tax credit systems, and the state will just call it even at that point. So what that really does, that siphons money upstream from the general fund. So there's less money in the general fund to put into our schools, to put into other things like Medicaid expansion and so on. So that's one way Mo Scholars works. Another way that this most recent legislative session, from what I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, Senator, but I believe that they had also taken $50 million directly from the general fund and put it into Mo Scholars. I don't agree with this, not one bit, because what that money does, it siphons it off of our public schools and puts it right into private schools, many of which we don't have any idea how they're executing on their curriculum. Are they teaching the kids that everything they need to learn? Are they bringing kids up to speed the way they should be? Or are they just teaching them about, you know, I don't have any problem with teaching religion, but if you're not learning the basics in addition to religion, then I got a problem with that. And so there's no guarantee that the students in some of these schools are actually receiving the type of education that's considered standard in this area. Thank you.
So the state of Missouri right now, we have the lowest paid teachers in the country, period. We're number 50.
I know.
Number
It's
50.
not-
Yeah.
embarrassing.
I know, it's extremely embarrassing. And so I think teachers deserve a raise.
Oh my God.
They are responsible for way more than just teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic. A great example of that is with SNAP benefits going away this Saturday. A lot of school districts are now taking on more and more responsibility to make sure the kids have access to food that they can take home so that they're not going hungry when they're not at school. So, you know, there's also school districts where they've got places where you can do laundry, for example, because some kids are unhoused or, you know, not adequately housed, and that is a way for them to be able to be in school with some clean clothes. So we're putting more and more on our educators and giving them less and less. You know, the other elephant in the room on public education support is we, around here in this region, are very dependent on local sources of taxes to pay for our schools. So I live in Ladue School District. 94% of how we pay for our students in Ladue School District is from local taxes, 94%. We could basically tell the state and the federal government to go fly a kite, your money doesn't help us at all. So we're basically privately funding our local school districts with local sales taxes and local personal property taxes and property taxes. So we're in a situation where, as taxpayers in this region, we are the economic engine of the state. We send a lot of money to Jefferson City, and that's used to take care of people's needs all around the state, but it doesn't necessarily come back here and benefit our region. So what happens, so like in my district, Kirkwood, for example, is over 90% locally funded. We, as taxpayers, we send our money to Jeff City for the state taxes, and that money's gone, bye-bye. And then we locally vote to tax ourselves so that we can have good libraries, good schools, better roads, good parks. We have a special school district that takes care of kids with disabilities. These are all things we do with local tax money because we want our region to be better than just adequate. And so these discussions about how do we, you know, what can we do to help improve public education, we have to have an honest conversation about how we fund schools. This is a very messed up system where if your kid lives in an area where the voters are okay with increasing their local taxes, then they have access to a better quality school. That's really not fair to Missouri students. So I'd like to see some kind of equalization there.
And a question like, what about like the lottery money and gaming and things like that? I thought all those things, one of the things was, well, we're gonna put this money into schools. So what happens to that?
The money from gaming does go to the schools, but it's opposite of what people in this room, like if you say that, you think, okay, I'm gonna just pick an easy number. Say it's 100 million. You think, oh, well, gaming is bringing in another 40 million from gaming, so we're gonna add that onto the 100? That's not what happens. That's just, it goes in there. It's not like it's an addition.
Right.
So the money from gaming does go to education. It just doesn't have that additive multiplier effect that we all think, that seems kind of common sense. So that's a big frustration.
Yes.
I lived in Vegas, we just moved here 6 years ago, for 34 years. Gaming gave zero to the school district. No. Zero.
If I may also, it adds at an unreliable rate. So when legislators say that they're gonna fully fund the formula, or we're going to fund the formula, then they fund it at a certain level. Gaming provides something, so then they take away. Oh, well, you've got this revenue stream coming in. So, and think about it, you know, we just had $1 billion winner or what have you. A tiny portion of that comes to the schools, and then the amount that's taken away doesn't equal out.
So why is that in the legislature, they don't address this school issue? I mean, do you have any insight into that, where that?
Well, public schools and public education is definitely under attack, and it's not just in Missouri, it's happening in all different forms across the nation. I think that there's a big push, quite honestly, by some to privatize schools so they can make money off of what should not be a moneymaker for a business or an entity. So that's one of the struggles that we're facing here in the state of Missouri is there's a big push to, to just take the public schools, make them not public anymore, and let, for example, there's a push every year for open enrollment, where kids could just go to any district that they wanted. If you think about what we just were talking about with how the foundation formula works and then all of the local taxes, there's not really a way that open enrollment could work fairly, because some schools get most of their money from the state, other schools get nothing. So what if that student moves from one district to the other? How does it work? So without having a discussion about tax fairness and funding fairness across the state, a lot of these discussions about open enrollment just don't work. So, and this is an example to me of why electing the right people to the state legislature matters. People in office are the ones that are making these decisions. So electing people that truly support public education is going to be what helps you here in this area. It is not, supporting public education feels very partisan when you're in Jefferson City. So it seems like a lot of the Republicans don't like public education and then the Democrats do. But when you're out in the community and talking to people, it's not partisan at all. You think about, you go to the football game, there's Republican and Democratic parents in the stands, everybody just loves the team and they're glad to have something to do on a Friday night. So we need to try as Missourians to reduce the politics from the discussion about public education, because it's not good for our kids.
No, I want to ask you one thing with the school and how they spend the money. I'm not a sports person. Why do they have to spend so much money on football fields and things that don't really educate a person? It's just, they're gonna hopefully get in the NFL, and more than half, probably 1% of the people anywhere gets in. And it's a lot of money wasted where they should have it, what's important in education. Sports to me is down at the bottom. I mean, the fields are done with all that turf and all these big, it's ridiculous.
Well, all of that information is publicly available. Each school district has all of their financial records online, so you can see all of that. And this is also, we all have elected school board members that make those decisions. So, keep an eye on your local school districts. I know in a lot of the school districts I represent, the athletic fields are funded through the boosters. So it's not actually money that's coming from tax revenue. It's money raised by, a wealthy family will donate money to build the new locker room or that kind of thing. So a lot of the above and beyond facilities are done through private fundraising. But no, all of this is where, you're holding my feet to the fire as a state senator. We elect school board members, we should be asking them those kinds of questions as well and going to their meetings.
But just like you brought up with, people working outside of Jefferson County and all that, they're all like in St. Louis County. Why is it when you buy gas, half the stations you have to put your zip code in?
Well, it's based on the
Then
format
they
of.
should use that for that person bought it in a different area, that taxes should go to that area.
That'll never
Period.
happen.
I
That'll
mean,
never
that's an
happen.
even way of doing it. You've given it sense.
Well, the zip code thing when you use your credit card is for security to make sure that it's the person that owns that
Right,
credit
I
card. So
understand that,
it's nothing to do with the gas
Right, but
taxes.
it's also a way that they could get the right taxes to go to the right places, period. It's not that difficult. I worked on IT, I worked at Boeing. I know what can be done, and it can be done. It's just, we got too many billionaires, millionaires in our political, and they just don't give a shit. And to be honest with you,
I completely
I'm
understand.
sorry.
Well, it's not a bad idea.
I kind of want to piggyback on just a couple things that were said in that, and I know we're meandering through several different topics, but I do want to remind everyone with the gas tax, there is a rebate form that we can fill out. I recently switched to an EV, so I don't fill it out anymore. It is very tedious. You do have to save all your receipts, and it takes a long time to fill out that form. But that is, I think it was, do you remember how many years ago it was? 3 or 4 years ago that they passed a gas tax increase. And the way that they were able to do that without putting it before the voters was that they were offering this rebate on it, correct? And so, a lot of people did it the first year and said, oh, it was only like $20 for the whole year. Well, that was because it was a graduated thing. It started out at a certain percentage, and then over a certain number of years, it went to more and more percentage of that tax. So it's not the entire tax that you can get back, but that is something that is available to people. So then that tax is really being imposed more on travelers that are coming through, truckers, things like that. And then I guess I'm gonna let Hank, there's not a lot more that I wanted to add on the education topic, except for that I don't think that any of our tax dollars should be going to any school that does not have a publicly elected school board. And I think that vouchers are a scam, because those vouchers don't cover the entire cost of a private tuition anywhere. So anybody who can't afford already to go to private school is probably not going to be able to because of this voucher. So the vouchers simply just siphon money away from our public schools.
Right.
That,
All right.
that gas
So-
tax is only if you itemize. No.
Yeah.
No, it's a separate form. It's not related to when you actually file your taxes.
But
It's,
again-
it's its own form that you fill it out and send it in separately.
Yeah, but again,
So-
they're making people do it when it's
Yeah,
already.
it's work. It's making more work for
already
you.
out there.
It is more work, but.
It's in a data, all they have
Yeah,
to do is type a
it-
little thing and.
It
they
is
can
more
pull it
work,
all out.
but what's nice is it is more work, but unfortunately, it is a way for us to get a little bit more of a rebate back, which, like
That
she
ain't
said,
worth it. Now,
you know,
not when it's in a database and you can pull
it's
shit out.
it's one of those
whenever
things
you want.
where
It's that simple.
it is a little bit more work, but when they give us a little bit piece of the pie, we gotta be thankful for
No, we
what they
don't,
do give
no,
us.
we don't, no, we don't. When it's out there, we should fight, and they can do
So,
it.
that being said, let's get to a few more of the questions here. And
We're gonna change.
one of the questions that was given to us is, what is your strategy to get other folks from the other side of the aisle to vote for you? Go for it.
My strategy is to get to know those people on a local level. My competitor, the person who's currently holding the seat for the 97th is David Castile. I have a good rapport with him. I do see him every so often. He gave me his personal phone number, I gave mine. There's another guy back there, I see him standing in the back, Dave Robertson, who's also with the Republican Party. And I thank you, Dave, for showing up. I really appreciate that, because I think we need to do this more often. I go to a lot of the Republican events, the kickoff events, and see the lights is blinking.
He's trying to turn the lights off on
It wasn't your Republican competitor.
Well, it's interesting, is, Dave Robertson in the back there, we had a pretty good discussion recently where we're at both at Johnny's Hideout right up the street here. And we started talking, okay, let's take all the cultural issues out of it, because, we can get sidetracked on that. We started talking about things like, the utility bills and things like that. And Dave, you may want to agree or disagree, but I think there was not a whole lot of daylight between us in some of these topics. And so I think that's how I personally reach out. I think that this BS that comes from Washington DC that tries to keep us separated, if you just look past all these cultural issues and look at the actual issues themselves and talk with people on a rational level, I think you find out there's a lot of agreement. Now, is that gonna work in Jefferson City? I don't know. Senator McCreery could probably tell me more about that. But that's at least that's my approach on the local level, to get to know these people. I will be going to more kickoffs. I think, who's that, Amato, what's his first name? Phil Amato, yeah, he's gonna have his kickoff in a few weeks. I'll be going to that as well. And so all these guys, not all, but most of the Republicans here know me. And, like I say, I was on News Talk STL recently. Actually, I was on there twice, and it's a very conservative talk radio. They've had me there twice already, and I'm probably gonna get invited back again, because I think even they, with all their, stuff that they put out there, they're still interested in hearing what the other side has to say.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna take advantage of that as much as I can, and not be nasty about it. I mean, it's just talk rationally, and, if you listen to the last interview I had at News Talk STL, we were just going head to head. It was like a slugfest there. But as soon as we went off the air, we shook hands, and just, they gave me one of one of their coffee mugs. And, it was, all is good. So, that's my attitude anyway, so I can only answer for myself, but that's the path I'm taking.
Do you need an assistant?
Sure.
I want to thank you for going the high road. I like that, but I really want to believe that people on the other side of the gamut believe in public education as well. And I was shocked to learn that 34% of Missouri kids go 4 days a week now.
Yeah.
And that's just despicable.
Could I just add one thing, as you mentioned High Road, that was one thing that Michelle Obama said, I think during the 2016 DNC. I think that was the worst advice, I think, the worst advice ever for Democrats. We're not higher than them, just because they disagree with us on issues. And again, I'm leaving cultural issues aside here, because that's a crazy world. But just because they disagree with us doesn't mean that we're in the high road and they're in the low road or anything. We have to get over that. And I think, when Michelle Obama said that, everybody cheered for her and everything, but that gave the wrong impression.
Well, I don't
We're out
mean
there,
to
so.
say that we're higher than them. I just think that all Americans, regardless of what party you represent or vote with, wouldn't all of us be for public education
Yep.
for our children? And, I guess it's all tax related.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pick on what you were saying.
No.
You spurred
I
a
didn't mean
thought in my head
to
here.
imply that at all.
No, I did you.
But I do think that it shouldn't be a partisan thing to have good schools for our kids. And the information that Senator McCreery just gave us, that we're 50th in the country, is shocking. In teacher salaries, I had no idea.
Aren't we 20 or 49?
I thought,
And money going to the school system? 50th in teacher and 49th. They used to be in Mississippi. And now we're the new Mississippi.
With the race to the bottom.
Yeah, I don't know the ranking, but in Missouri, the majority of school districts receive most of their funding from local sources, so the state is not meeting its responsibility.
Yeah, so I have long admired Dan's approach of going on the conservative radio stations and conservative podcasts. I can't say that I take the same approach, but I do consume a lot of conservative media, which is something that a lot of us, Fox News, turn that off. But I'll be honest that in the last, 6 months or so, since I've gone out of my way to actually listen to what is being said on conservative media, don't come for me after this, but Fox News actually isn't as bad as we think it is, especially when you compare it to these other ones like OAN and Newsmax, and now the MyPillow guy has his own network.
But I think that's because it's become normalized. How extreme Fox News truly is has become normalized.
True.
So we say it's not as bad as the others.
True.
They're all horrible.
Oh, you're absolutely right on that. But I can even say, for example, I heard a Fox News podcast the other day where it was 2 female commentators discussing how we need to do better at childcare and universal pre-K and things like that. Those are concepts that I did not expect to hear on any type of conservative media. So, there are still some things that both sides can agree on. And when it comes to the situation with public education, and that we'd like to think that every single person would support public education, I genuinely believe that there are billionaires, there are people at the very top who stand to profit from starting for-profit education systems in schools and these charter schools and things like that. And it's the messaging. It's the messaging that's coming down that eventually trickles down to individual people, where all of a sudden your neighbor's like, no, I don't support public education, and it just, you look at them like they grew a second head, because it doesn't make sense to us. So we have to kind of figure out collectively, how do we do better about messaging? And then as far as going back to the original question was what again?
How do you see yourself working with people across the aisle in order to secure your victory?
Okay, so, I'm going into my third time running for this seat, and the number one thing that I notice when talking to people in my community, they're not talking when I knock on doors about what's happening in DC. They're talking about things. The number one thing that I heard last time was foster care, that we have to do better for foster care system in Missouri. That's not something that you hear on Fox News or CNN. Nobody's talking about that. But these are the issues that are actually important to people in our community, and I think those things are important to both sides of the aisle. So if we can reach voters on issues like that appeal to everyone, then that's where we're going to be able to secure a win and get our messaging out.
What my colleague said is exactly right. So so when running for office, the politics, it takes one skill set. And then if you get elected and you become a lawmaker, a public policy maker, that takes a whole nother skill set. So one of the challenges for people like us that are candidates, but then we also become elected officials, is you kind of have to, switch out some of your tools in your toolbox and switch to some other tools. So, you're absolutely right. When you're trying to win an election, it's all about connecting with the voters locally at their doors and listening more than talking. And then once you become an elected official, then your audience, the people you're trying to work with and persuade, become the people from the other side of the aisle, especially for us because we're in the minority party. So the only way I've been able to get legislation passed is by finding Republican colleagues that share the same values, and then we work together on legislation. So that's just what happens when you're in the minority party. So you start out trying to persuade people to vote for you. If you're lucky enough to get elected, then you end up trying to persuade the majority party to work with you on things.
One last quick comment that I'm going to add on that, something that I never even thought about before I was a candidate, and I hope I don't get too deep in the weeds here, I'm trying to make it quick, but as a candidate, the most important thing you need to do is figure out your win number. When you know your win number, then you figure out how many persuadable voters, based on how many votes you got the last time, or the similar candidate got the last time, and then you figure out, like in my race, it's something like 3,000 that I have to reach and persuade and get them to change their mind to vote for me. And it is recommended that you reach out and make contact with those people at least 3 times, each one of those people. So that's 9,000 people that I have to talk to before November of next year. So I'm gonna put my shameless plug in here and say, we need you to achieve that work. No candidate can knock all the doors that they need to win an election alone. We can't do it. So we need you guys to help us. So if you know anyone who's interested in volunteering for campaigns, reach out to me, reach out to Dan. We'll make sure that we find you a candidate that you're passionate and excited about, and we'll go knock some doors together.
Guys, sadly, we are down to our final question of the night. And that being said, it is a good one. Is there a way that we can all do our part to stop the illegal gerrymandering?
Oh, God, yeah.
People, not politicians. The citizens veto. That is the number one thing that we can do right now. Is if you haven't already signed that, please do. That was another thing that I actually forgot to mention on the Protecting Public Education. There is also a petition. I think it is Missouri Right to Education, I think is the name of the petition. That one, everybody knows about the gerrymandering petition, and everybody knows about Respect Missouri Voters for the most part. Not a lot of people know about the one for education. So the one for education is intended to safeguard money for our public schools and keep our public funds for public schools. So the number one thing that we can do right now is signing that petition. But even after those petition signatures are done with, we're also going to need to reach people, because once it's on the ballot, then that's only half the battle. Now we have to convince people what way we need them to vote on that. So I'm sure there will be plenty of canvassing, call banking, text banking, all of the above. So if you're not already familiar with them, look up people, not politicians, on Facebook, on, on the internet, and sign up with them for updates.
I'm sorry to add this question, but didn't we already put a vote that said that there was fairness in Missouri elections? That we
Clean
already-
Missouri?
Right? Didn't we already do that?
That was overturned.
We did, and the legislature overturned it.
Okay.
That's why we need.
Well, the legislature, yes. So the legislature introduced a joint resolution that put it on the ballot. And then, of course, they did what they do. The ballot language was misleading. They made it look like it had to do with campaign finance reform at the time, which was really not the case. I think it changed it by
$5 to 0.
Yeah, it changed lobbyist gifts or something like that from $5 max to 0, and that was like the first bullet point. So people thought, oh, we're fixing lobbying and campaign finance issues, and that's not what it was. So it overturned, and that's what they're trying to do right now with Amendment 3. And another way that you know that these things are disingenuous is last year we voted yes on Amendment 3.
Yes.
Next year we're voting no on Amendment 3.
Or whatever the number is.
It's already, it's Amendment 3, and I believe that was intentional personally. Also, the what they're referring to that is the initiative petition reform item, they are calling that protect Missouri voters. The campaign against that is respect Missouri voters. That's intentional.
That should not be allowed.
Well, hopefully.
But if we sign.
So I just want to say a couple
Before it's approved by
Yeah.
Secretary of State, do we need to sign it again?
So do not sign the petition again.
Okay.
There are some people who think that floating this, oh, these signatures weren't valid, this and that type of thing, that it's intentional, because it is illegal to intentionally, knowingly sign a petition more than once. So the campaign itself is recommending do not sign it again if you've already signed it. But it is important when you sign petitions, make sure you know what petition you're signing, so that if you run into another petition gatherer somewhere, you don't just say, oh, I already signed that. Maybe not. There's over 100 petitions right now.
There's 5 out there that people like us are generally supporting. So, yeah, so the Missouri voters are gonna have the final say on what if there are gonna be new congressional lines. I don't think the voters will, I think we'll collect enough signatures to get it in front of the voters, and the voters are gonna vote it down. And part of that just has to do with math. So pretend like you're in 4th grade. In the past few elections, Missouri has about a 60-40 electoral split. So like this last election, Trump got 58.5% and Harris got 40%, so 60-40. So that means the maps really should be 5 Republicans and 3 Democrats. It's already messed up because it's 6 Republicans and 2 Democrats. So now they're trying to take it one step farther and saying 7 and 1. It's going the wrong direction, and voters are going to figure that out and not be real happy with that. So the voters will have their final say on that. But I think this is bigger than just this discussion about maps. It has to do with politicians not respecting the wishes of their constituents and their people. And we can have an entire session on this of how many times politicians have undone what we voted on. And this to me is just another example of, like a power grab and of politicians thinking they know better than the rest of you. So we just have to stay educated, stay involved, not get distracted, keep ourselves educated, and make sure, we get as many people out to vote as possible.
Well, I can't add much more to this. I would like to take it in a slightly different direction, because I'm under the influence of a book I read some time ago from Catherine Gale and Michael Porter. It's a book called The Politics Industry, and they talked about gerrymandering an awful lot. They talked a lot about what we call plurality voting, which is first past the post, and they also talked a lot about the electoral system. All these things are kind of rigged against us in a way, and if you look at places like Wyoming, they get 2 senators, and California gets 2 senators, but California has over 60 times the population of Wyoming. So a person from Wyoming not only has a lot more representation per capita in Washington, D.C., but It's like this old joke I used to tell, if you live in California and you wanna vote 3 times for president, you can do it legally. All you have to do is move to Wyoming, because, you know, you get more representation that way, and that's just the way our politics works. So I'm not so sure that it's really a good system, but it's a system that we have. One of the changes that they recommended in this book is multi-winner districts. I don't know if you know what that is, and I'm not so sure that works so well with US congressional districts, but maybe for state districts it might work better, where you combine 2 or 3 different districts into one, and then when you go to the polls, you can vote for, you know, 2 or 3 representatives, and they could be from, you know, either party or from, you know, a third party. That sort of dilutes the idea of gerrymandering. It dilutes it a little bit more and minimizes or mitigates its ill effects. Also, there's things, I mean, I'm gonna put it out there, ranked choice voting. I think that's not necessarily a bad idea. It's an idea that Missouri, a lot of people in Missouri don't like, because they think they're gonna lose power by implementing ranked choice voting. But my opinion, ranked choice voting, it's just like having a runoff vote. If somebody doesn't make 50% or more, then you have what's called instant runoff. So they just take, you know, the second vote. It's kind of complicated, but just suffice it to say, it's like instant runoff voting. So you don't have to go back to the polls and vote again. And it also guarantees that whoever does get the votes gets 50% or more. What RCV does, ranked choice voting, also, I think it minimizes the amount of animosity taking place between candidates, especially candidates in the same party. You have extremists within the Republican Party, you have extremists within the Democratic Party, and they tend to generate more noise, and they get more attention. They get people more enthusiastic about voting. And so when they're in the primary, especially if it's a primary where the other party doesn't even have a candidate, the primary is actually where the decision is being made, and that's where the most extreme candidates survive. So ranked choice voting sort of helps put the kibosh on that. Another thing they talk about is top 5 voting. Now, these are things that have already been done in Alaska. Alaska has top 4 voting. What that means is you go to the polls during the primary and you vote for the top 4 or top 5 candidates, whatever the state sets up, and you vote for your candidate. The top 5 candidates who wins, they go to the general election. So it's really interesting. You can have all 5 candidates from the Republican Party in the general election, or the Democratic Party, or a mixture. You have 2 candidates from the Democrats, 3 candidates from the Republican. So they all run against each other, and so that again mitigates the animosity taking place between candidates, because you have to be careful what you say about the other candidate. You have to be not so extremist. So these are just things, these are ideas, these are not things that I'm necessarily, if I were to win, I wouldn't necessarily go out there right off the gate and propose it. But these are ideas I have in the back of my mind, because I think we need to reconsider how we do things in the state and as well as the country. And if the state is a crucible for the rest of the country, what we do in Missouri can trickle out to the rest of the nation. And that's how a lot of laws, a lot of things are changed. Yeah, I ran out of words, that's it.
That's impossible.
Thank you so much, we appreciate that. And unfortunately, folks, it is time for us to wind down tonight's event. And I would first like to start off by saying, first and foremost, Women Dems, thank you so much for putting on tonight's event. And particularly, thank you so much for the time and Cheryl and everyone who put on tireless amounts of effort into tonight's event, and all the weekly streaming sessions that we had that led up to tonight, and Dan, who is very vital in putting this thing together. Without those guys, tonight would not have been possible, and please give them a huge round of applause, and especially and as we part ways, you may be wondering to yourself where to go from here and what to do next. And honestly, we wish we could tell you. The harsh truth is the path of this country is currently headed is really uncharted territory. We strongly encourage you to be strong, be vigilant, be curious, do research, be heard, be loud, and most of all, be the nonviolent threat that they already see you as. Now is the time of action. Even if that action is simply calling or emailing your local constituents, I implore you to step out of your comfort zone and just allow your voice to do the talking for you and to stand tall. President John F. Kennedy said famously, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country." Right now, the leaders of this country are trying to silence its people, and it will not be allowed to happen when those voices are united. And it starts at the local levels and not the top. Tell every politician, from the distinguished panelists standing before you, to the ones that are already in office, and that any others that are trying to enter the race right now, that a country, a state, a county, and a city that is for the people, by the people, cannot fight the people. Many of you have many young children, and you may go out trick-or-treating tomorrow night. Others of you might sit at home and hand out candy. Ask yourself this very one question: what country do you see themselves heading towards when they hand out that candy? Be proactive and try to do something. As you exit, please stop by the tables that are outside and in the back and see how you can become more involved. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for being a part of tonight's event. And please drive safe, and we'll see you at the next one.
Can I add just one more thing?
Yes.
We have some campaign material over there on the table, right over here underneath the fan there. I just have a limited number of these, what do they call them, cozies or whatever.
Yeah.
That's from my campaign from last year. Tracy McCreery has some things up there as well. I have my business card and everything else up there. And I also I personally want to thank Robert Barr for being our host. And also Kate Reese in the back there, and Connie Doty, and Cheryl. Where's Cheryl? Oh, there it is. Cheryl. Your last name skips my mind.
Shay.
So all these people are on the board that really put everything together. Cheryl put together all of the artwork for that you might have seen on Facebook. Yeah, so it was definitely a team effort.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? What do you suggest that we do when we try to put our message out and we get repercussions, severe repercussions? Either on Facebook, in person, where I feel like I'm gonna be knocked out. I mean, you can't give your opinion against a Republican, let alone, Trump. It just doesn't work. They're too violent, they don't wanna hear.
There's a lot of vitriol online. I mean, I get a lot of it.
I mean, as I told you, I wake up every morning crying because our country is being taken away from us. Our rights. The Constitution is being shredded as we sit here. And I hate to say it, but the Democrats that are up there in DC are just, there's a few I like, but I don't hear from any other ones. There's no fighting going on for us. And I don't mean when I say fight that we lower ourselves. Michelle Obama, I love that. When they go low, we go high. She meant that, in my opinion, is when they trash talk us. That's what I feel like she meant. But that's okay. But what do we do? Tell me what I can do.
Well, first of all, I mean, I can only give you my own answer for it. I get a lot of vitriol online. It's just part of the online life. What I find out though is, I mean, to give you an example, I was knocking on a door a few years ago, back when I was campaigning for Senator McCaskill, and this guy answers the door, and he's just a total MAGA guy. He's got the MAGA hat on and everything. It's like, it was one of these houses, like, felt like a Norman Bates sort of place. But I looked at the guy, and he looked at me, and I'm like, he says, "Are you a Democrat or Republican?" I said, "I'm a Democrat." I says, "Are you going to pull a shotgun on me?" He just laughed, and so what I find out is, when I deal with people one-on-one, you just got people are vitriolic online because they're anonymous, they don't see
Right.
the danger starts when we start, putting action to that vitriol. And that's when it
And
really
we're
starts
seeing
to
that.
take off, and I would encourage anyone out there, Democrat or Republican, to tone that part down. I don't see a lot of it here locally, honestly. I see it online, but again, meeting people face to face, I just don't see it.
Well, let's just face it, we get it every day from the president, come on.
Yeah.
He gets
Okay.
us enough, we, you
But
know.
I think there's some legitimacy to what he's saying, that when you work out with, when you talk to the people, your neighbors, talk to your neighbors that you don't know, talk to the people that you see on the street, go to restaurants and things like that, and talk to people. And what I find in talking to people, because I feel the same way that you do, is that most people are open, even if they're on the other side of, maybe they voted for Trump, maybe they thought they were gonna
And you
get
know what,
something
this is our
different.
country, we are allowed to vote for who we want, and that is.
I'm just saying that I don't see them being angry and
Oh.
disrespectful to me, for my opinion. And I'm
I'm
just
going to the wrong
encouraging you
places.
to work locally, that's what
I'm
I'm
just
just trying to
keeping
say.
my, to be honest, I just keep my mouth shut. My husband, he says, one of these days, you know, and I don't yell or scream, only in my house.
So, I'm
But I
gonna tag on to this real quick and just say that, you know, one of the main things that I've done in running for office, and something that Women Dems has done this year, is lots of different booths at fairs and events and festivals and things like that. And, you know, since 2022, I would say I've done at least 25 different booths at fairs and events and festivals. There have been 3 incidents that I know of that were just awful. And one involved a man last summer, I believe it was, that was wearing a visor with the fake Trump hair, and he had a bandage on his ear, and he was harassing us at our booth, and we ended up getting the police, and he was escorted out of the county fair for harassing us. So, you know, the point is, as many times as I've been doing this, the really, really bad interactions are very, very rare in person. So, to kind of wrap it up, I'm sure, I don't know how much time you all have, and I don't know what time the library closes, but, you know, if anybody has any other questions or anything really important that they want to let us know, we can deal with that out in the lobby or even in the parking lot if it's not too cold.
I was gonna say, biggest thing we can do.
Thank you so much.